Hello my dear friends, I hope all of you are doing good. Today I am introducing you a new subject in mechanical engineering, compressible fluid flow. In some universities, this subject is also known as gas dynamics. You might have heard the terms Mach number, supersonic flow, hypersonic flow, etc. This is the subject in mechanical engineering where we deal these topics. This is my favorite subject in mechanical engineering since my BTech days. The fundamental concepts of this subject lie in your lower semester papers like thermodynamics and mechanics of fluids. But this subject is much easier and interesting than those papers. Before getting to the further details, I would like you to be aware of the industrial applications of this subject. The concepts of gas dynamics are widely used in industries which use some kind of compressible fluids as their working medium. Many large-scale industries use steam or gas turbines, turbo compressors, etc., in which the working fluid is a compressible fluid. Now, coming to the aeronautical industry or even in missile and rocket propulsion, the basic concepts which we study in this subject is applied. Now, let me introduce some of the major textbooks in this subject. Since this is one of the main subjects in mechanical engineering, there are plenty of options available. I prefer two textbooks, both by Indian authors. The first one is Fundamentals of Compressible Fluid Dynamics by P. Balachandran. The other one is Fundamentals of Compressible Flow with Aircraft and Rocket Propulsion by S.M. Yahya. The concepts are very well explained in these books and are really easy to follow. The only problem you may find if you refer these two books together is that some of the notations used are not the same. For example, the velocity is represented by alphabet V in P. Balachandran's textbook, whereas it is represented by alphabet C in S.M. Yahya's book. However, in my lectures, I will be following the notations followed in S.M. Yahya's textbook. In this subject, you have to solve many numericals, and for this, you require a data book, like the steam table you had in your thermal engineering or design data book in your machine design. Among the available data books for this subject, the best one is Gas Tables for Compressible Flow Calculations by S.M. Yahya. You need to get this book at the earliest because for solving the numericals, you require this book. Otherwise, you have to by heart some 100 plus hectic formulas. So, we are now done with the introduction part. Before getting into the subject, let me quickly revise some of the concepts which you have already seen in thermodynamics and mechanics of fluids. We know the subject title is Compressible Fluid Flow. So, let us first understand the meaning of this title word by word. Let us start with fluids. We know any substance which is capable of flowing is called a fluid and it does not have a shape of its own. It continuously deforms when some kind of shearing forces are applied. Therefore, all kinds of liquids, gases and vapor are example for fluids. These fluids can further be classified into two, incompressible fluids and compressible fluids. In incompressible fluids, there is no change in its density during its course of flow. The density remains a constant. Therefore, all the liquids come under this category, incompressible fluids. Now coming to compressible fluids. In compressible fluids, the density is not at all a constant. It always varies. Gases are examples for compressible fluids. So in this subject, we are mainly dealing with these compressible fluids whose density varies during its course of flow. Example are, as I told before, gases. Therefore, this subject is known as compressible fluid flow or gas dynamics. Next, steady and unsteady flow. If the fluid properties do not change with respect to time, then that particular process is known as a steady flow or steady process. All the properties, whether it be the pressure, temperature, density, all these properties are a constant during the time considered. Therefore, as the equation goes, dou P by dou T, that is time rate of change of pressure is equal to 0. Dou T by dou T, that is time rate of change of temperature is equal to 0. And finally, dou P by dou T, the time rate of change of density, is also equal to 0. Similarly, all the properties are a constant. They do not vary with respect to time. Now coming to unsteady flow, one or more of the fluid properties changes with respect to time. In this subject, compressible fluid flow, we have already seen that the value of density changes. So compressible fluid flow is an example for unsteady flow, because here dou rho by dou T, that is time rate of change of density, is not equal to 0. The density always changes. Next one is flow process and non-flow process. Change or series of changes happening inside an open system is known as flow process. We know in an open system there is a continuous interaction between the system and surroundings. The system and surroundings interact with the exchange of both matter and energy. Such a system is known as an open system. Therefore, turbine, pump, duct, nozzle, all these are examples for an open system. So the changes or series of changes happening inside these kind of open systems are called flow process. Now, what do you mean by non-flow process? The changes or series of changes happening inside a closed system is known as non-flow process. So closed system is a system where there is only exchange of energy. The matter is not at all exchanged between the system and surroundings. So the series of changes or changes happening inside those kind of closed system is known as non-flow process. Next, let us discuss about reversible process and irreversible process. You all know about this. In a reversible process, the system and surroundings can be restored to its original state just by reversing the process. Example is a quasi-static process happening in the absence of friction. Now coming to irreversible process, the system and surroundings cannot be restored to its original condition just by reversing the process. Almost all the things happening around us in this universe come under the category irreversible process. Next, let us discuss about the laws of thermodynamics. We know there are 4 laws of thermodynamics. Let us start with the 0th law of thermodynamics. 0th law of thermodynamics introduces the concept of temperature. Consider 3 systems A, B and C, 3 independent systems. First, let us imagine the system A and B are in thermal equilibrium. Then let us consider system A and C are in thermal equilibrium. Then according to the 0th law of thermodynamics, systems B and C will be in thermodynamic equilibrium. So the statement of 0th law is, if 2 thermodynamic systems are each in thermal equilibrium with a third, then they are in thermal equilibrium with each other. So as I told before, the 0th law of thermodynamics introduces the concept of temperature. We know thermometer works based on this principle. Next, let us discuss the first law of thermodynamics. The first law of thermodynamics is the thermodynamic version of conservation of energy. We know law of conservation of energy states energy can neither be created nor be destroyed. It can be merely changed from one form to another. Now, the first law is just the thermodynamic version of law of conservation of energy. The first law introduces the concept of internal energy. Internal energy is a thermodynamic property which can be defined such that the change in its value is the algebraic sum of heat transfer and work transfer of the system during its change of state. Here you can see a system at 2 different states, initial stage and the final stage. The work is done on the system so that the piston is compressing the gas inside it. So the internal energy or change in internal energy du is equal to dq minus dw. Here we are putting a minus sign for dw because we are doing work on the system. We are compressing the piston. So change in internal energy du is equal to dq minus dw in this case. So the statement of first law of thermodynamics, whenever a system undergoes a cyclic change, the algebraic sum of work transfer is equal to the algebraic sum of heat transfer. Now let us discuss the second law of thermodynamics. As you know, there are two statements for second law of thermodynamics: Kelvin-Planck statement and Clausius statement. First, let us see the Kelvin-Planck statement. The core idea of Kelvin-Planck statement is that there is no machine or engine in universe which can work at 100% efficiency. There will be some kind of losses. That is what the concept of Kelvin-Planck statement. Here I am illustrating one thing. You can see there is a reservoir whose temperature is T. It transfers Q heat to an engine E, and the work done by that engine is equal to W. And here it is shown Q is equal to W. But is it thermodynamically possible the entire heat energy is getting converted into the work by that particular engine? But that cannot be accepted. That is utter rubbish as far as Kelvin-Planck statement is concerned. Now let us try to correct this figure. Here there is a reservoir again whose temperature is TH, which means at a higher temperature, TH for a higher temperature. It transfers QH amount of heat to an engine E, and the engine produces work W. Along with that, some heat is rejected to a lower temperature reservoir or simply the surroundings. As we can see, QL is the amount of heat rejected to the surroundings or reservoir, and that reservoir is at the temperature of TL. So this figure you can accept with respect to the thermodynamic law. Now the Kelvin-Planck statement: it is impossible to devise a cyclically operating device, the sole effect which is to absorb energy in the form of heat from a single thermal reservoir and to deliver an equal amount of work. So that is the Kelvin-Planck statement. Next, let us see the second part of the second law, Clausius statement. The idea of Clausius statement is that you cannot transfer heat from a body which is at a lower temperature to a body which is at a higher temperature without doing some kind of work. So let us see this illustration. There are two bodies. The blue one represents the body with a lower temperature TL, and the red one represents the body with a higher temperature TH. And there is a heat pump which transfers heat from the lower temperature body to the higher temperature body. Again, this cannot be happening. So this is not at all possible by the Clausius statement. So we are rejecting it. So the Clausius statement, it states that it is impossible to construct a device which operates on a cycle and produces no other effect than the transfer of heat from a body at lower temperature to a body at higher temperature. So that is about the two laws in the second law of thermodynamics. Next, let us discuss the final law of thermodynamics, the third law. The third law of thermodynamics speaks about entropy. We know entropy is the degree of disorder or randomness in a system. Here I have illustrated a system at three different temperatures. The first one represents the system at a higher temperature. So we can see the molecules inside that system are in absolute disorder or randomness. In the second figure, we are trying to reduce the temperature of the system. As the temperature is getting reduced, the molecules are trying to settle down. We can see that the degree of randomness is less compared to the first figure. And in the third figure, we can see that the temperature at that condition is absolute zero or 0 Kelvin. We are maintaining the temperature at 0 Kelvin in the third figure. Here we can see that all the molecules are perfectly settled down. So the third law of thermodynamics states that the entropy of a pure substance in a complete thermodynamic equilibrium becomes zero at absolute zero. Absolute zero means 0 Kelvin. Next, the gas laws. All of you might be familiar with these two laws. I am just revising it. First, let us start with the Charles law. The volume of an ideal gas at a constant pressure is directly proportional to its absolute temperature. Boyle's law. The pressure of a given mass of an ideal gas at a constant temperature is inversely proportional to its volume. Now, why we discuss these two gas laws? Because in this subject, as I told before, gas dynamics, we are dealing with gases. So some of the properties of the gases should be clearly understood. So with these two laws, we will be writing down an equation. PV is equal to mRT, the characteristic gas equation. So just before that, I would like to introduce few terms, gas constants and specific heats. We know there are two types of specific heats and two different gas constants also. The specific heats are Cp and Cv. Cp is the specific heat at constant pressure and Cv is the specific heat at constant volume. Now let us try to define these two terms. Cp, the specific heat at constant pressure, is the amount of heat required to increase the temperature of a unit mass of a substance by 1 unit when the heating is done at constant pressure. That is Cp. Now coming to Cv, specific heat at constant volume. It is the amount of heat required to increase the temperature of unit mass of a substance by 1 unit when the heating is done at constant volume. So those are the expressions, or those are the statements for Cp and Cv. Now we know Cp minus Cv is equal to R, the characteristic gas constant. As the name indicates, the characteristic gas constant is a character of a particular gas, which means the value won't be the same for different gases. If you take air, there will be a value for R. If you take another gas, say oxygen, the value will be different. So as the name indicates, it is the character of the gas. Now the second expression, Cp by Cv is equal to gamma. Gamma is called the ratio of specific heats. Now you have to by heart the values of Cp, Cv, R and gamma for air. For air, the value of Cp is equal to 1005 joules per kilogram Kelvin and the value of Cv is equal to 718 joules per kilogram Kelvin. Now the characteristic gas constant R is equal to 287 joules per kilogram Kelvin and ratio of specific heat gamma is equal to 1.4. So these four are the values for air. So in the question paper for a numerical, if it is given as air, you have to consider these values. That won't be given in the question paper. Now if it is some different gas, say oxygen, nitrogen, then the properties, these properties will be given in your question paper. And we have one more gas constant, the universal gas constant. As the name indicates, the value would be the same for all the gases and the value is equal to 8314 joules per kilomole Kelvin. Now how can you connect this universal gas constant with the characteristic gas constant? That is the last expression. R, the characteristic gas constant, is equal to Ru, the universal gas constant, divided by the molecular weight of the gas considered. The next part is the characteristic gas equation, PV equal to mRT. One thing you have to clearly understand in this part is about the units you are taking. For pressure, the unit is Newton per meter square. In some question papers, the unit of pressure will be given in megapascals or in bars. You have to readily convert it into Newton per meter square. V, volume meter cube, m, mass kilogram, R, the characteristic gas constant, the value is 287 if it is air and the unit is joules per kilogram Kelvin, and finally temperature, again you have to take the unit of temperature as Kelvin, not at all in degrees Celsius, because in most of the questions the temperature will be given in degrees Celsius. You have to readily convert it in. So this thing you have to clearly make it to your mind. These are the standard units you will be taking in this entire subject. In thermodynamics, we know there are many processes like isobaric process, a constant pressure process, isochoric process and constant volume process, isothermal process and constant temperature process. In this subject, you have to mainly deal with isentropic process where the change in entropy is equal to 0 because it involves no change in its entropy. All the isentropic processes are the example for adiabatic process because there is absolutely no heat transfer for an isentropic process. So we know for adiabatic process you can take this equation PV raised to gamma is a constant. Now the last expression, that is the expression between temperature, pressure and volume for an isentropic process. You have to by heart this expression, that is the expression connecting temperature, pressure and volume for an isentropic process. Now that's it. We have done with the fundamentals of the subject. Now let us just step into our subject. This is the syllabus for your first module. We are starting with some of the concepts like continuum, system and control volume approach, etc. Then we will be moving to the derivations like conservation of mass, the continuity equation, or conservation of momentum, energy, etc. And slowly we will be starting with Mach number and we will be moving directly to the subject. So this is the syllabus as per APJ Abdul Kalam Kerala Technological University for your module 1. So let us start with the three approaches. The first one is continuum approach. In science, we know there are two types of approaches. The microscopic approach, where we are concerned with the molecular or atomic level of the body, or the macroscopic approach, where we are not at all concerned with the micro or molecular level activities. We consider the system as a big object. Now the continuum approach is almost similar to your macroscopic approach. The fluids, like any other substance we know, are made up of molecules and they are always in motion. In most of the engineering applications, the behavior of these kind of individual molecules are of little importance. The problem is concerned with the gross behavior of the fluid. Now, in this continuum approach, it implies the molecular density in the system under consideration is large enough to consider the fluid as a continuous matter. So this approach permits the use of macroscopic approach. And you have to understand that this approach cannot be followed all times. There are one or two conditions where we cannot go for continuum approach. If the mean free path of the molecules is large enough with a characteristic length in the system, which means we are considering a very small object and the molecular level action in that matter is higher comparing to the size of the object, then you cannot go for this continuum approach. Or if the average time between the molecular collision is large, if the average time of molecular collision is large, you cannot go for this continuum approach. So that is the first approach, and the second approach is the systems approach. So in the systems approach, the analysis of the problem is carried out by concentrating the study on the quantity of the matter enclosed by a fixed or moving surface. So the system here represents an arbitrary collection of matter somewhere in the 3D space selected for our study. There is something which separates system and surroundings, that is known as boundary. So boundary is an imaginary surface which separates the system from surroundings. Now the systems can be of three types: open, closed and isolated. First, the open system. In an open system, we know there is a continuous flow of matter and energy. It has a fixed space but does not contain a fixed mass of fluid. The mass of fluid always changes because there is a fluid coming in and going out, as you can see in a turbine or a pump. Now coming to the closed system. The main difference comparing to the open system is that in this system, the closed system, it has got a fixed quantity of matter. There is no outflow or inflow of the matter from or to the system from the surroundings. But the system can interact with the surroundings through energy exchange. That is, it can interact with heat and work exchange. Now, finally, we have to see the isolated system. As we know, in an isolated system, there is no interaction between system and surroundings. The mass and the energy is neither transferred to or from the system. Here I have shown some figures to illustrate these three systems. First, you can see the open system where there is mass and energy. In this figure, heat interaction. In the second figure, you can see a closed system where there is absolutely no mass exchange, but you can see energy exchange in terms of heat. And the last one where you can see it is an isolated system, so there is no mass or heat exchange. Now, the last approach is control volume approach. In this subject, gas dynamics, we are following the control volume approach throughout. So control volume is defined as an arbitrary volume fixed in space selected for our study purpose. there is a continuous flow of fluid through the control volume, and the identity of the fluid occupying the control volume always changes. It is not fixed, so it changes time to time. There is an imaginary surface which bounds the control volume, and that surface is known as control surface. The matter and energy can cross the control surface as in an open system. So here I am illustrating a control volume, and along with that you can see the control surface. So I am showing a pump. You can see the liquid entering the pump and liquid exiting the pump. The work is done on the pump. So for a control volume approach, we are considering all these things. The dotted line indicates the control surface, and everything inside that control surface is known as control volume. Now, as far as the control volume approach is concerned, there are 4 kinds of boundaries. First, let us discuss the real and imaginary boundary. Here you can see a nozzle. For a nozzle, you can see the fluid enters at a particular plane and leaves at another plane. So here we can see a real and imaginary boundary. The boundary along with the surface of the nozzle is known as real boundary, because such a boundary really exists. Now, the imaginary boundary, which is indicated by the vertical lines, it is corresponding to the plane of fluid entry and fluid exit. Actually, there is no such boundary as far as a nozzle is concerned. But for our study purposes, we are considering a boundary. So, such a boundary which actually doesn't exist is known as imaginary boundary. Now, the next one is fixed and moving boundary. Here you can see a piston cylinder arrangement. So, there is some gas inside that system. As the piston reciprocates, the upper plane or the upper boundary always moves. So that such a boundary is known as moving boundary. It always moves as the piston reciprocates, whereas all the other boundaries are almost fixed. There is no change. So such boundaries are known as fixed boundaries. And with that, we have come to the end of today's session. We have just revised some of the concepts which we have already seen in thermodynamics and mechanics of fluids. Plus, we have seen 3 different approaches: the systems approach, the control volume approach, and the continuum approach. So that's about today's class, and I hope you enjoyed my class. Have a great day. Thank you.